In addition to the sounds of our sneezing, it probably won't come through. But if there's random loud banging coming from my track, it is because we have finally brought home Miles's snake, Noodle, who I think we've determined is 17 or 18 years old at this point.
Old.
Old lady. Miles has had her since they were a kid. We weren't allowed to have her in our last apartment. And for plausible deniability reasons, I will neither confirm nor deny if she's allowed in this apartment, but she is here. She has this nice big new tank and she's loving it. She's wiggling all around, being very cute and active. But she has decided that she wants to levitate. So, multiple times a day, multiple times an hour, really, I will see her go to the corner of the tank. And she's a corn snake, by the way. So, she's about 5 feet long ish. She'll go to the corner of the tank and wiggle her way all the way up to the top, doing good, then make a right angle and have her head go across the long side of the tank while she's still going up and see how far she can reach. And what she wants to do is shove herself inside this tiny half a centimeter lip that's on the inside of the lid of her tank and try to go all the way across. But unfortunately, that's not possible. Gravity is not on her side. So when she gets 75% of her body across the tank, supported by this little tiny bit of her tail, she will crash super hard onto her logs and enrichment items and stuff. And for ages, we couldn't figure out what was causing this loud noise because we have upstairs neighbors, but it was coming from inside our apartment. And so we just see her fucking dash herself upon the rocks multiple times a day. And she has not learned. It doesn't seem to be causing her pain, or she presumably wouldn't do it. But if that happens, then that's why. It's just the snake being ambitious. Let's call it ambitious.
Speaking of things attempting to defy gravity, if we hear the sound of the fan in my computer at any point, hopefully that comes through as room tone because it's constant.
Yeah. I went to the store before this and I got a lot of seeds for my little garden, which is thriving. I planted my radishes too close together, so I'm going to have to thin them out a lot. But I hope Miles likes radishes because I'm going to grow a lot of radishes. And then I also got sunflower seeds for my sunflower plant. And I got a couple of mixed pollinator, mixed flower seeds that hopefully I can sprinkle. We have a lot of birds in our yard, but hopefully they're so used to the bird feeder, which is on the other end of the yard, that it won't occur to them to try to eat my flowers. Hopefully.
Fingers crossed. You are just putting out new food items for them.
Yeah. Enrichment for their enclosure. How are you doing, Boo? How was your day?
It was fine. I was on my own in extractions. I was working with somebody from another team, which was good. He's quite competent. So that was nice. It's like if you like don't work with someone fairly often, it's like, I don't know how this is gonna go. Like, we don't know how each other works. And then, but like, they just get shit done. It's like, that's nice. Yeah, it was fine. It's fine. And then I was whistling the Gondor theme for most of the day. Either like going back and forth between like Gondor, Rohan, Fellowship,
Mm-hmm.
and then Hades Town for some reason.
Love it.
The epic piece, the Hades Persephone story.
I got a passionate rendition of whatever is the first song from Hades Town from my 11-year-old cousin during a family vacation last weekend. And she is musically gifted. She has a wonderful voice, an excellent sense of rhythm, very good musician. But it was 8 a.m. in a hotel lobby, and I was just not ready for that level of energy. She was bringing it, and I respect that. But then I had to go back upstairs and pretend to go back to sleep because I was not ready to experience Hades Town in that moment.
No, that's That's not a musical for first thing in the morning.
No.
Have I listened to it on my drive into work? Yes, but I'm insane.
Non-committal shrug for the audience from me.
Listen, I love
Hilarious.
you.
I love you too. But whenever I think about Hadestown, I just remember what you told me about your beautiful moving experience and all of the beautiful art stuff. But mostly what immediately comes to mind is that everybody had those bands of fabric around their chests at that one point in the show,
Mm-hmm.
and you're an equal opportunity ogler. And so now I have that mental image. I could just Google it. I bet it's on Google Images. Note to
Oh,
self, for personal reasons, Google this later.
we can also go see Hadestown at some point.
Sure. Speaking of music and epic stories and things that make us emotional, but also have equal opportunities for ogling, do you want to talk about Return of the King?
Well, hello everyone.
Hello.
And welcome back to another episode of The Fandom Apprentice. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Ryn. I grew up on Lord of the Rings, and it's been a lot of fun to come back now as an adult, having studied some of the influences and just having a whole new background to revisit some of my childhood stories. And it's been also really fun to do that with my good friend Sam.
Hello, I'm Sam. I'm the other one. I've done it, y'all. I have now officially consumed all of the Lord of the Rings original canon media. I have read the books. I have watched all 3 movies, the extended editions, of course. So I've done it. I officially get to have my card stamped. I'm a fan now. I don't know what privileges that entitles me to, but we can figure it out. But yeah, we've done it. We're here.
It entitles you to have people who've read the Silmarillion talk down to you.
They were going to do that anyway, so.
But yeah, today we have watched the third of the 3 movies. And so we're going to finish out our coverage of those. It has been forever since we recorded, so it's going to be a little rocky. Please forgive us.
I believe in us.
Rocky like the giant rock piercing the city of Minas Tirith.
Boo.
I don't have a structure to my notes. I sort of kind of have like all mixed up together 3 main topics for
Mm-hmm.
the day. I've got like commentary on design choices, commentary on story choices, and commentary on musical choices.
I have just kind of overall vibes, things that I did not vibe with, things that I did vibe with, and then some specific more things that I researched about visuals and special effects. And my stuff goes vaguely in the order of the movie. But,
I mean,
it's just
same.
vibes. This is the catch all. It's the Return of the King episode, but it's also the catch all for everything. So
Yeah, and I do actually have a piece that will be going back and deep diving into a piece from Fellowship.
mhm.
Because this is our podcast and we can do what we want.
Hell yeah. So, my feeling overall about the movie, and I did have the privilege of getting to talk about this in person with one of my other friends, also listener of the show, hello, and sort of verbally puzzle through my thoughts. And the first thing I said to them was, this was the hardest movie to watch for me. It was challenging in terms of just like being kind of dark and bleak. There were things about it that I really didn't like and just found viscerally gross. And there were a lot of things that I felt like just didn't have the same payoff that we got in the book. So it's it had its high points, it had its good points, but it's easily my least favorite of the three movies.
Fair. Fair.
Did you have more
No, I
or a response to that?
I don't know if I sort of struggle to place them. I think Return of the King is probably my favorite of the three books,
Hmm.
just because like this is when it becomes right that epic tale, and there are some incredible shots and some of my favorite pieces of orchestration in this movie.
Hmm.
And some of I think some of the more iconic shots from the series like come from this movie. But yeah, there were definitely pieces of it. First of all, we've noted on this podcast before that I am spider averse,
Hmm.
and I just didn't watch the Shelob scene.
That's fair. And
Like
you know
I
what
was
happens
there.
in it.
I
Mhm.
was there with y'all. I was just kind of like not paying attention to Madame Shelob.
That's okay. That is your prerogative.
I think the biggest piece that I really noticed though was I felt like I could see more of the effects.
I also felt that way.
I sort of had to wonder whether that's because we've specifically been paying attention to that. And now, three movies in, we're kind of attuned to like what's an effect. And also, these movies are 20 years old. And so, special effects have come so far. And while these movies were so cutting edge 20 years ago, they don't hold up to some modern standards. And other things, though, that do hold up really, really well because they were
Mhm.
using practical effects for it.
Yes. And even some of the special effects we'll talk about later that I still noticed were still good. I was looking at it thinking, okay, I see a computer did that, but a computer did a good job. But to pull a little fact from later on in my special effects notes, part of the reason that you may have noticed more special effects in this movie is that according to its Wikipedia page, it has 1,489 visual effect shots, nearly 3 times the number from the first film and almost twice that of the second. So there's way, way, way more CGI in this movie than in the other two.
I think the other piece of it is now because we're watching it in like HD.
Hmm.
And so, in the theatrical cut in 2000, it may not have been like so crisp.
Yeah.
And when it's that crisp, it makes the lines that don't really fit stand out a little more. Specifically, what I was noticing for that was the size differences. Whenever the body doubles were there as the hobbits,
Hmm.
or like when they might have even had like mannequins, I felt like that was much more obvious.
Yeah, I was also keeping more of an eye out because you had pointed it out in the last one. And then once I was looking for it, I couldn't unsee it. That was one of the things that I just chose to accept, going, okay, sure, it's a
Yeah.
movie, it's pretend, but it did stick out. I also had a very weird and specific problem with this viewing because we had to split it up into, I think, 3 sittings just because it's so
Yeah.
long and we were all so busy. And for some reason, my sound quality was fine the first time, but the second 2 times it sounded horrible. It was tinny, there
Oh
was something
no.
happening. So I think that I also missed a lot of the more subtle sound effects and music bits. And when I was going back to do more prep for the show and I was watching it again, it sounded fine. So it must have been something in the air between Jeff Bezos's website and my little Bluetooth earbuds. I don't know. But it was also, I feel like every time that we sat down to watch this movie, at least one of us was just having a bad day or had something going on. So I know that at least I was in a bummer mood a couple of the times. So it cast a bit of a shadow over just like my frame of mind. There was also, I know that I've mentioned in, I forget if this was last time or the first time, the amount of gore in these movies. This one, I felt like there was a lot that was really viscerally gross to me. There's Gollum biting into that raw fish, Saruman getting fucking impaled fully on screen, heads flying over the wall at Minas Tirith and hearing their wet thumping, orcs being nasty, lots of blood. It just really, that makes my skin crawl. I'm a huge horror fan and I don't mind the idea of blood and guts, but something about seeing it just happen slowly in front of you, it just is so yucky to me. There's a couple times I thought maybe it was a bit much.
That's fair.
I do have one last small gripe, and then I will go into the much longer list of things that I like, because I did like many things about this movie. My last sort of major critique is, despite how long the movie is, and it is very long, it's about 4 hours if you include the credits, I feel like we ended it still not knowing the characters that well. And I might be spoiled because I just came off reading the books and spending countless hours analyzing them, but especially Sam and Frodo's relationship felt like it lacked a lot of the depth that it had in the books, and I just wasn't really invested in what they were doing. There was a point towards the end where it cut away from some other part of the story and back to Sam and Frodo, and Miles and I simultaneously went, "Oh, I forgot about these guys. We just forgot they were there." And that's not great.
There's a lot, particularly towards the end, there's a lot of really quick cuts back and forth. We don't
Mhm.
stay in any one scene for a super long time.
Yeah.
And I get particularly during the battle at the Black Gate and the approach to Mount Doom, like that's happening simultaneously. And so the
Mhm.
idea is like, we're seeing 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. Like that's what's happening, but it is kind of jarring to keep
Yeah.
going back and forth. I agree that we definitely didn't get depth on a lot of characters. I feel like we got depth on Aragorn.
Yes, very much so.
And
Aragorn
that
can get deaf on me. Sorry. It was right there. It was right there.
I would love it if Aragorn was right here.
So true.
There were multiple shots of Aragorn in this movie again where I had to just be like, this is porn.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this more later, but the scene at the end where he and Eowyn finally kiss, well, first of all, they were just standing near each other. And I went, oh my God, being bisexual is so hard, just looking at them. And then they kissed, and I was wearing shorts. And so, along with my shriek of delight, I threw my hands up and then slapped them down really hard on my legs, like one does when they're excited. And I did that so hard that I left a handprint on my own leg that was then visible for a good hour afterwards.
I mean, that's the proper response to that scene.
It it was over, the cradling of the chin, and they lingered on that kiss. It was so good. It's hard to be bisexual and just look at everyone.
See, I definitely have commentary on that scene too.
And we can talk about that more later if we want to go in more chronological order, but we also don't have to. Other characters that I felt like we saw more of in this movie, I felt like we got more Merry and Pippin, and we got some sweet little moments between the two of them, like when Merry gives Pippin the last of the long bottom leaf before he gets shipped away for accidentally drawing Sauron's eye upon him. Whoops.
Mm-hmm.
They're very sweet together.
We got more of them. I felt like we got a little more Gandalf,
Hmm.
and we got a good amount of like Faramir and Denethor.
The one whose screen time really stuck out to me the most, though, was Smeagol slash Gollum. I mean, the movie opens with this whole framing scene where we see him killing Deagle and finding the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such an interesting choice to put that at this point in the film, at the beginning of Return of the King, but also after we've already seen the first two movies, and then sort of reframing how we think about him. And he has some new lines and some new mischief. And as much as I fucking hate him, I still think he's really annoying. I did appreciate getting to see more of him because I think that it was really effective and an interesting opportunity to use the medium to show us more of his backstory.
That decision to give Smeagol more more evil plans
Mm-hmm.
led to the decision for Sam to like go to be banished temporarily, which that was an interesting choice because they don't like obviously that doesn't happen in the books where
Yeah.
Frodo tells Sam to go home. It it's an odd one. It's similar to the like Aragorn falling off the cliff and they when they think Aragorn's dead. Yeah, it's an odd decision, but it works to create tension in this medium, which
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it has to be a more tension filled story or a more tension filled version than the original.
Yeah.
I know I mentioned at least in our first discussion episode of these that they've sometimes been criticized for like reducing the story down to like generic sword and sorcery fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And this sort of insertion of tension, so I feel like sort of makes me feel that way, but also I don't feel necessarily like it when thinking about it now from high atop Amandine lighting the beacons. I don't dislike it. I think it works for the story or works for this retelling.
Yeah, I think I am, like I said, being a little bit more critical because I am just fresh off the books for the first time ever and
Mm-hmm.
going, oh my God, it's not the same. And yeah, I think that if I had seen the movies first, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. I just know that there's all of these like subtle little moments that we just don't have time for in a movie. And especially, like you said, having to do all this rapid back and forth because we can't have 30 minutes of one set of characters and then 30 minutes of another set of characters. That's just not something that American film audiences are going to like. But I still grumble about it.
I have some like sort of vaguely like I like half rewatched the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I was taking sort of semi chronological notes. The design of Minas Tirith and specifically the Citadel when we saw it, my first thought was, oh, that's a basilica.
Mm-hmm.
It's really similar, like in initial shape to Santa Maria Novella in Florence. There are pieces of the facade that are really similar to the cathedral in Pisa, Cattedrale Primesiale di Santa Maria Assunta, and like pieces of the shape that reminded me of the Basilica di San Petronio in Bologna. And it's all that white, like limestone marble, which reminded me of places in. I haven't spent time in southern Italy, but pictures I've seen from southern Italy and from places I've been in Greece,
Mm-hmm.
that white limestone, that marble, it gets really hot in the summer
Mm-hmm.
in the Mediterranean, and I it made me think about like what's the climate like in Gondor? We're down south, we're not super far south, but is it a Mediterranean climate?
Hmm.
How do the mountains affect this? Like is the white stone, because Gondor in general, like everything was gray and everything was white. Is that like a climate choice?
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like that was most likely a Tolkien thinking, wow, this would look really fucking cool choice. But now
Yeah, but I mean, he's also like he's clearly basing Gondor on Rome,
True.
and so he's pulling from like these old pieces of white marble in the Roman Forum. I was thinking about the dress of the civilians again reminded me of Rome.
Hmm.
It felt very Romanesque, and then some of them look like Catholic nuns.
They do a little bit, don't they?
There's a particular order of nuns that's always in like gray, and they have the gray like wimples and habits.
Hmm.
So it's not the like the black robe or the white robe nuns, but I see them around the Vatican a bunch. I feel like they look like old school teachers more than anything else,
Hmm.
but nuns.
Yeah.
I guess that one long shot of everyone in gray and black, that piece is when Faramir is leaving on his doomed attempt to retake Osgiliath.
Hmm.
And so in some ways it's a funeral march.
Mm.
And so, that could be a piece of the, why everyone's there in drab colors, but also everything in Minas Tirith is drab.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that I had also noted design wise is I was comparing and contrasting Theoden and Denethor's throne rooms because they both speak to their characters really well. Because you think about Mediceld, it's a mead hall, it's a communal space, it's warm, it's full of people, there's tapestries, there's people eating and drinking and talking, and it's still really impressive and beautifully decorated. It's obviously still a castle and it's up high on a hill, but it's also accessible and lived in to a certain degree. Whereas the throne room in Minas Tirith, which Wikipedia tells me is called Tower Hall, so that's what I wrote down, it feels really sterile. Denethor is usually the only one in there unless people are going to see him. And something that I went back to rewatch just because I had a feeling that this might be the case, and I was right, is that the first time that Gandalf and Pippin go in, there's not even any music. It's just footsteps and Gandalf's cane tapping on the stone floor. And so it's this very forbidding, unpleasant environment. There's not even anyone milling around on the grounds outside. There's just the four guards being kind of ominous. And the other random little design thing that I noticed in there is that Denethor isn't sitting on the throne, which makes sense. That would be disrespectful. But he has his own little chair next to it. And that is just really pathetic and kind of comical because you have this big white gleaming stone chair with a golden thing hanging over it, and then Denethor hunched over in his weird little black seat mutilating a tomato. It was a little bit funny.
Well, in thinking about the way you put this now, when we first see Theoden in Meduseld, when he's under the control of Wormtongue,
Mhm.
it also looks, Meduseld also looks sterile, or maybe stuffy is a better word, like it's been shut up and nobody's been allowed in there.
Yes, yes.
And it's only as Theoden returns to himself that Meduseld also returns to itself
Mhm.
until at the beginning of this movie after Saruman's death, which, by the way, the manner of death for both Saruman and Wormtongue is the same as in the books, even though it's in a completely different place.
True, true.
Because Wormtongue stabs Saruman in the back and then gets shot by somebody with a bow. But now that when they're back in Edoras after that, and there's drinking to the glorious dead, that is when Meduseld is truly at its height. And then of course it's there's going to be a fall off as many of the Rohirrim will not be coming back there again.
Woof.
Denethor specifically, now going back to Denethor, I feel like he's so much more obviously ring hungry and ring corrupted than in the
Yeah.
books. He's just eminently hateable.
He's got his stupid big robe and his everyone in these movies has got the quivering chin down. He is quivering in an unsettling way.
Yeah, well done, John Noble. The choice also to have like the 2-day unkempt beard is a good one. And it
Mhm.
was interesting because I thought about that, and then I was thinking about that during that scene where he's talking with Faramir before he hallucinates Boromir.
Mhm.
And Faramir also has that 2-day, like he hasn't shaved in a few days beard because he's been on guard duty in Osgiliath.
Mhm.
But on Faramir, it looks intentional.
Yeah.
Like it looks like he trimmed up the edges a little bit. Whereas on Denethor, it's like, oh, he's just letting things go.
Yeah. And now I'm just imagining, because I've also just in my unrelated to Lord of the Rings life been reading a lot of books that deal with court drama and palace intrigue and stuff. So I'm just imagining the servants in the tower going, oh, I'm not gonna fucking go tell Denethor to shave. You tell him. No, I don't want to get exiled. Like, I'm not gonna do that. So just like all of the servants going, oh, something's wrong with him, but I'm not gonna say anything. That's I can imagine it very clearly.
Two other notes from like this. We do spend a minute in Minas Tirith, which is nice. But two other fun notes. I spotted at least 4 women in armor as extras in one shot.
Oh, very nice.
It's all the soldiers without obvious facial hair. And then there's one shot where it's like where again Faramir and his suicide mission are leaving. And there's a shot and there's a kid. And I was like, wait a minute, I know that face. And it's the same kid who gasped when Bilbo was telling the story of the trolls and fellowship,
Hmm.
which is adorable. So it's like that's clearly got to be someone from the production crew's kid,
Yeah,
that now just gets to be an extra, which is just so fucking cute.
that's delightful.
And then I also noticed that the standard of Gondor on the shields right now is just the white tree. There is a pennant flying in the breeze when Gandalf and Pippin ride through on their first ride through that has the 7 stars over the tree crowned. But that design doesn't return on armor until Aragorn is wearing the armor at the Black Gate.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, I love that.
Faramir's helmet when he's going on the suicide mission does have the 7 stars, but that helmet fits him so badly.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Like it does not fit over his luscious hair.
Oh no. I guess that's a good problem to have. But thinking about Aragorn reminds me of another thing that I really liked from this movie, which is seeing more of Elrond and Arwen's relationship, just in general, which was great. And Hugo Weaving really delivers an understated performance that works so well. I don't know about film, I don't know about acting, but I know enough to know, oh, this guy's doing just the most subtle, but also at times most fucking hilarious thing. There's a scene in the war camp with the Rohirrim
Mm-hmm.
where Aragorn has a dream about Arwen. He has this vision of her. And then he's immediately summoned to Theoden's tent, right? And so we see he walks in, Theoden is there. We see a figure facing away from us wearing an elven cloak. We have a little tendril of long, luscious hair peeking out. And Theoden is facing us, facing Aragorn. And he looks uncomfortable. His face. He's just, I do not want to be involved in whatever this conversation is about to be. So he hustles the fuck out and goes, I take my leave, and then runs away. And Aragorn is confused. He is gazing at this hooded figure with this softness that we'd expect for how he looks at Arwen, his one true love. And then they stand up, and Elrond reveals himself. And Viggo Mortensen does it so well. He is shocked, and you just see this face journey that he goes on where he is surprised, disappointed, recovering quickly, trying not to insult his father-in-law. And then Hugo Weaving is just
Slash also foster father.
Hugo Weaving just completely deadpan the whole time. He is not happy to be there. That whole scene, so fucking comical. I loved it. And
Yeah, and then when Elrond gives Aragorn Anduril, he's visibly shaking as he's talking. It was like,
mhm,
Hugo Weaving, are you okay?
yeah. And then there's oh, I think Aragorn's holding it up, and the sword literally splits the frame. It is literally dividing them. Again, I'm not a film expert, but some symbolism is pretty obvious, and you know what? I liked it. I was eating that shit up, probably because I was already in a good mood from the very funny sight gag that they just did.
I had actually had some other commentary on this scene specifically.
Yeah.
Elrond sort of shows up and gives Aragorn his blessing, I guess.
Hmm.
And this is also that conversation from the appendix where he basically tells Aragorn, like, if you're going to marry my daughter, you have to be the fucking king of Gondor.
Hmm.
And it takes the place of the Grey Company showing up with the banner that Arwen has made.
Hmm.
Because it's still somebody showing up with a symbol of his office and of his station without now having a whole bunch of extra characters that we haven't introduced up to now.
Yeah.
He also the piece that I feel like another piece of story that didn't get developed super well was he's like claims Arwen is dying now because of the
Yeah.
evil from Mordor, and I was sort of like, okay, is she dying because you're an elf and so any half elf that chooses death is always dying, and so her choosing to remain in Middle Earth is a choice to die regardless of what happens in Mordor? Or is she so sensitive to the power of Mordor that she's dying? Like, it wasn't really developed enough to make sense there, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like the movie was implying that she was directly, individually tied to the ring for some reason, which is not the case. I think it's kind of maybe also drawing on from the books, the stuff that Galadriel says about the time of the elves ending and her power because she also has her ring. I can see where they got that idea from, but I think if you're just taking the movies on their own, it seems to be implying that Arwen is directly tied to the ring for some reason, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I did then go ahead and compare Anduril to the sword that Aragon is.
Aragon, keep that in.
um, you know, Aragorn, make sure I really emphasize the extra R, the sword that he's been using up to now. Anduril is a little bit longer, it's a little bit narrower, it's got a larger pommel and crossguard. They're both of the like hand and a half bastard longsword type variety, but Anduril with its longer pommel and longer blade is clearly more of a two-handed weapon.
Hmm.
So where we see Aragorn wielding his sword as a one-handed weapon in the fight against uh, the orcs and the during the departure of Boromir, we see after he gets Anduril, he uses it more as a two-handed weapon through most of the rest of the film.
Hmm. There is one point where he's giving his big speech where he holds it up in the air in a very dramatic, awesome gesture. And
Yeah,
there's so many things that he does that just show how ridiculously strong Aragorn is, because obviously he is. But all I could think just seeing him hold up the sword was, oh my God, he's so strong. Because I have been trying to reincorporate yoga into my exercise routine because I want to be flexible and stuff. And it's hard for me to just hold my arm up in the air with nothing, not holding a giant heavy sword. So I just immediately had like the muscle memory of doing yoga poses and going, oh my God, I couldn't do that. I couldn't even hold this man's sword. He's just that strong and cool. I mean, something, I could hold his sword, something, but.
Swords are specifically typically like not super heavy. They're usually like well balanced because you have to be swinging them around a bunch.
Mhm.
You're gonna get you need to work on it, but like, and you know, build up strength in your wrists and things.
So you're saying I need wrist strength to handle Aragorn's sword?
Yes, I am. And with that, I guess, well, speaking of how strong people are,
Mhm.
can we talk about how strong Eowyn must be for a second?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Because as the Rohirrim are riding out of the war camp, when Merry is there like requesting to go with the king and he gets brushed off, and then he's just standing there and he gets fucking yoinked one-handed and lifted up into the saddle. And yeah, Merry's not a big dude. He's a halfling. He is also wearing probably at least 40 pounds of armor,
Mhm.
minimum. And he just gets yoinked by the back of the neck, lifted up, and then placed like on the saddle, which is, yeah, on a galloping horse,
Mhm.
which is control, strength. Like, it's one thing to like pick something up off of your horse and like toss it over your saddlebow. It is another thing to be like, I am going to position this carefully, uh, you know, bring it all the way up and then down again.
And not injure the poor little hobbit.
And then also, I was thinking about this, and in Two Towers, we see her practicing sword strokes, and she pulls her blow inches from Aragorn's face when she turns to see him there.
Mhm.
Right? That takes a lot of strength as well to stop the momentum of that blade. This is not a woman who just like fucks off and lets the servants do the work.
Yeah.
Like, this is a warrior.
This was something that Miles and I were talking about in the car the other day too. They really appreciated that the film people, let her be effective in battle. She is no more or less skilled than any other soldier. She's there, she's whooping ass. She is trained and skilled. She is not just appearing to do her one cool trick and then need to be rescued. She's fully participating in the fight because she has been
Yeah.
trained to do that.
Another thought from, since we're now talking about Rohan and that war camp scene, my first thought when I saw the tents was those are like yurts, but not.
Mhm.
It's like the top of it is more pointy than a yurt. But then the sides and like the stitching on it, and the doorways were very yurt like.
Yeah. I was worried about fire safety in the camp. I assume that they have it under control, but there were a lot of torches burning really high next to all of this flapping fabric everywhere. I don't know if you know, you seem like you would know things about war camp fire safety. Is that realistic? Because I was worried that one of those torches was going to fall down and then everyone would die in a giant fire. I was worried about it.
I have to assume that it's some sort of like that there's some sort of fire retardantness to the fabrics.
Hmm. They could be wool.
They could be wool, but also then I'm thinking about like I know I've read at some point like waxed canvas
Hmm.
because that's waterproof. But I would think that with the wax that would go up quicker.
Yeah, wax is candle. Candle is wax. So you've made a very big candle.
um so that's not great.
Hmm.
Yeah, when I happened to do outdoorsy things in my youth, we very much kept the tents away from the fire pit.
And also thinking about impractical but still fun design inside of Theoden's tent, there's furs strewn about everywhere on the ground. So it's so lush and cozy and awesome in there. But again, just thinking about servants, somebody had to carry all of these fucking furs for kind of no reason and put them on the ground just to make the tent comfy. And I'm thinking, okay, what if it rains and you get mud under those furs? It is going to stink to high heaven. It's going to get mildewy. It's going to be gross. This is only cool if you're in a perfectly dry, mild climate. Otherwise, this makes no sense. And then some poor schmuck has to deal with all this wet fur when they could be carrying weapons or something. But maybe that's just the excesses inherent to attending on a king and something monarchy bad. But it occurred to me mostly just because I used to have one sheepskin rug, and so I can't imagine lugging around 50 bear pelts or whatever.
Well, and there are plenty of nomadic cultures around the world that do carry around things and then put them on the ground.
This is
So
true.
there are ways to do this.
But this is a very temporary war camp. This isn't somewhere that they're staying for any length of time.
Well, yeah, but it makes sense to me, I guess. It was
They're
like
just
this is the king's war tent.
he can have as many furs as he wants.
Other thoughts on design and story choices. I love during the fight at Minas Tirith. I love that Gondor is fully just chucking pieces of the city out of their
Hmm.
trebuchets. How did they get those onto the trebuchets? I don't know.
Don't
But
worry
it is
about it.
kind of funny, and it's just like that is a part of a building. Was it a part of a building that was just knocked off by the orcs catapults, or was it like something previously that fell down and you stacked it in the trebuchet for when you might someday need it? I
Yeah.
don't know. I also really enjoyed Gandalf's confrontation with the Witch King here, with the
Hmm.
flaming sword, and he breaks Gandalf's staff, as we've already seen Gandalf do to Sauron.
Hmm.
And so it's like, for a second, oh, Gandalf is gonna die.
For real this time.
Right. And there's the Nazgul and like danger themes over this. And then there's a horn call, and the music cuts out. And that is the only sound as the sun breaks through. And that's what pulls the Witch King away, as the horn call gets repeated and joined by some deeper notes as the army of Rohan rides over the ridge, and we get a low brass rendition of the Rohan leitmotif.
Hmm.
World of men will fall.
Which is just so good.
It is so good. This may be a good opportunity to pivot into your deep dive because I know you have prepared a tremendous amount about music. The stuff that I have about design is mostly just some scattered notes, which I can stick in when they feel relevant. But I know that you have prepared a lot of musical thoughts, and I am very eager to hear them.
I have prepared a lot of musical thoughts, but actually I realized as I was going through, I have another like softer deep dive. It's a shallow dive
A shallow dive. Let's hear it.
into weaponry and military tactics.
Yes, please. Okay.
Staying for a minute on the Rohirrim, I would like to talk about heavy cavalry tactics, because this is a thing in this movie. It's a never-ending road to cavalry.
Hmm.
These men who seem to know my crime will surely come a second time, one day more.
I do not know what that's from, but it is a reference to something. You're making a face of disappointment because I don't know, but I don't know what it is. I'm sorry, I don't know a lot of
Les
things.
Mis!
I've never seen it.
We were singing it the other day in book club.
Yeah,
Tori and
and I
I.
was tuning out and cooking dinner because I thought, okay, Ryn and Tori are singing a song, they're having fun, they're doing a bit, and I didn't think to question it. But
Okay, good.
now I'm on the record. I don't know. We can watch Les Mis together if you want. I have not seen most things. This is the conceit of the show.
It's all good. But setting aside my little joke, heavy cavalry tactics.
Yes.
I guess actually I would like to start earlier with the earlier version of heavy cavalry that we see. We see Faramir and the Knights of Gondor going out on their suicide mission. Heavy cavalry was the bane of militaries everywhere for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge being it takes an incredible amount of money and time to train and equip a heavy lancer. And so like that's the trade-off. You can only have so many of these lancers because you also have to train and equip the destriers, their horses as
Mhm.
well. You can't just like throw somebody onto a cow pony and be like, now go hit him.
Yeah.
You have to train a horse for war and also the person on the back of the horse.
Some of the same tactics are used on police horses today. I was just talking to people about this. Miles was giving some of my family members a quick lesson that Ryn is making a excited, devious little face.
No, this is not excited. This is a
This is
face.
yeah. But horses have a natural instinct not to trample. They are weenies. They are scared of everything. They do not want to step on uncertain ground. So you, big squishy meat sack of person, they don't want to step on you. I did not know this the first time that I met a horse that was galloping freely and majestically in a field and came straight at me, and Miles wasn't afraid of it, and I thought I was going to die, but that's neither here nor there. But horses have an instinct not to trample. And so both military and police horses have that instinct trained out of them. So, just be careful around cops and their horses. Anyway.
But the thing with heavy cavalry is like it's basically a ton of person, armor, and horse coming at you at like, I don't know, 50, 60 miles an hour.
It's like a tank.
However, yeah, it is a medieval tank. That is what it is. And all of that force is typically concentrated at the end of a lance.
Mm.
And if you have a whole line of this, your line of, spearmen, like can't do shit about it. And it was only the development of it, the things that really broke the supremacy of heavy cavalry charges, or one, pike formations, strong, well-trained pike formations, so where you have like an 18-foot long pike and people in multiple rows where you can set up a pike phalanx, because horses, even when they have that instinct not to trample trained out of them, still don't want to run onto a wall of spikes.
That's reasonable.
So they will be very hesitant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The other ways are projectiles that can pierce armor, which is you have to have either a very heavy draw bow for that, or a crossbow that has a heavier draw than a person can pull, and usually a bodkin point arrow, which is there's no like flanges on the arrow. It's just a single point, so all the force travels into just the point of that arrow. It's like a bullet in arrow form, or alternatively, bullets.
Those will work too, so I'm told.
That also is like gunpowder also broke the supremacy of heavy cavalry. But this heavy cavalry charge by the Knights of Gondor, the group that we see out there is a 2-rank deep charge. It's heavy cavalry in front, armored capapi head to toe, but only some of them have lances, so they're not all striking at the same spot. And the second rank appears to be like light armored rangers with bows, but they're not shooting as horse archers because those are longbows, and longbows are not super practical to use from the saddle.
Mm-hmm.
They were also working their horses up to a run way too early. And they're also charging at a city, which isn't super useful. You kind of want your heavy cavalry charge to be in a relatively open space where your enemy can't run away, but so your charge also isn't restricted by shit your horse can run into.
Yeah, you can poke the walls with your spears all you want, but
Mm-hmm.
not really going to be the most effective approach.
But then of course, then the knights spread out. Like they get out of their close formation as they get closer to the city, which kind of defeats the point of the cavalry charge.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea of the heavy cavalry charge is you're hitting in a mass so that the formation that you're running into is completely shattered.
Yeah.
And now you're just a mass of men and horses running along and getting shot. Which on that note, we have a little close-up shot at one point of one of the orcs' arrows and of their little bows. The arrows, you pointed this out, I think, it was that they were
Mhm.
kind of rusty and like didn't look very sharp.
Yeah.
And they're also not on super heavy draw bows, like because they're so small, unless they're like super thick and all horn and sinew. And those fletchings too at the back looked super bare. The purpose of a fletching is to put spin on the arrow, which increases range, force, and accuracy.
Mhm.
So the orcs' arrows likely would not have gone where they're aiming. They likely wouldn't penetrate armor unless we assume that orcs are significantly stronger than they look and like significantly stronger than men, like in a 1-to-1 fight, and their bows have a super heavy draw, which we haven't seen necessarily being a thing.
Yeah.
But then we compare that to the Rohirrim, who, when they show up, they're all wielding these long spears.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Point in the Rohirrim's favor. They keep in
Point
formation.
because it's the spear. It's pointing.
They keep in formation. Also another point in the Rohirrim's favor. During that fight, I have to now give a point to the orcs as well. Because when the Rohirrim come up on the hill, the orc general is running around yelling at everyone to form a line, pikes in the front, archers in the back,
Mhm.
which is exactly what they should do. And then all of the orcs in the front rank, they go down on one knee, they brace their pole arms against their feet and against the ground. And the second rank keeps them more horizontally. So now you've got a 3 or 4 rank deep wall that these horses are going to run onto of points. They aren't the 18-foot pikes that are most effective because that keeps the armored knights from getting anywhere close to you. And they're all kind of disparate. They don't have pikes or even really spears. They kind of have like some sharpened sticks. They have like Lochabar axes, some like glaives and like billhook type pole arms. But then the other point in the Rohirrim's favor is there's 6,000 of them.
Mm-hmm. That will present an advantage.
In rank after rank after rank. And even though there's a lot of orcs, we see as the Rohirrim charge, the orcs don't hold their line very well. Which, to have that polearm unit be effective against this heavy cavalry charge, you have to remain in formation.
Mm-hmm.
A single man or a single spot where the cavalry can break through and your formation's done. Even if the orc archers manage to take out riders as they're coming in, even if the front rank gets obliterated by the spears, now you've just got rank after rank after rank of heavy cavalry charging into you. Anyway, I think that's my military semi deep dive, not really shallow wade in.
I can put a little bow on that with some fun horse animation and horse special effects facts. So,
Please.
Tolkien, Horse Scroll, would approve of the treatment of horses in this movie. All of the horse deaths were animated. No horses were put in distress or harm in the making of this film, don't you worry. But another thing that is technically very cool is the visual design for all these movies was mostly done by Weta Workshop in New Zealand. And they've been around for a really long time. They have done everything. Think of every movie with cool visuals, they have had a hand in it to some degree. And they're the ones who coined the term bigature that we've talked about on the show before. But they also developed a new system, a new technology for animating crowds. Basically, it's called Massive Multiple Agent Simulation System in Virtual Environment, which was made specifically for these movies. And what it does is it lets individual characters, which they refer to as agents, individual agents, react to their environment and react to each other so that you can get big battle scenes that are complicated and chaotic, but without everyone just having the same exact animation copy and pasted, or conversely having to individually animate each specific person. But in scenes where you had hundreds of horses, obviously there were some real horses, there were some real riders, but a lot of them, some of the horses had mocap stuff going on, some of them were animated, but they used that technology to get these really cool big battle scenes, and a lot of that was done for the horses as well, which I thought was really neat.
That is super cool. I think I knew the fact about like them creating the crowd animating thing like for Lord of the Rings, but yeah, it's super duper cool.
I also love that the article I was reading really, really strongly emphasized they needed you to know that the horse deaths were animated. That was completely CGI.
Good.
Good. They were well treated. And I mean, one of them got to go home with Viggo Mortensen, which is the best treatment of all.
Speaking animal deaths that were also animated, but the animated animals actually died, I guess. The Mumakil.
Oh yeah.
The depiction of the Haradrim is rough.
Yeah, it's rough. Another
Not great.
another design thing. I mean, the first thing that I said when they came on screen was, "Oh, look, they're foreign. They must be evil." Wow. Again, not subtle, my friends.
Them and the Corsairs of Umbar too.
I struggled to find the original source, but I saw a quote in an article from one of the production designers who said that for the Haradrim, if you notice, a lot of them are wearing scarves and masks and their faces are partially obscured. They needed to dehumanize them by covering more of their faces so that audiences wouldn't feel as bad about seeing them get killed, which I understand why they made that choice. I don't know that I agree with that choice, but yeah, it was something we were intentionally dehumanizing the Haradrim, which kind of defeats the purpose of having them there. But
It's a really common thing in various stories with henchmen. It's one, you cover their face with a mask so you can use the same extras over and over again. And two, so they're not a person, they're just the soldier standing there.
yeah.
But the Mumakil specifically, first of all, they're fucking giant. The whole scene felt like fighting the walkers in Empire Strikes Back. But they all had 6 tusks.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, a couple of them, like I know there's extinct proboscideans with those underjaw type tusks as well. Let me look into this. The most I found on on cursory research on extinct proboscideans was 4 tusks, usually like 2
Mm-hmm.
under the jaw and 2 above. The Tolkien wiki says that the design of the Mumakil was based on Paleoloxodon, the straight-tusked elephant, which obviously was not that gigantic,
Mm-hmm.
but was sizable and only had 2 very long tusks, but only 2 tusks.
Mm-hmm.
But they were clearly combining that with like some like Gomphotherium type proboscideans that had different positioning of tusks and just making them very spiky.
I loved my favorite detail from the Mumakil was I don't know if all of them had this or just some. I assume they all did. Their long bottom tusks. They had this spiked, basically razor wire strung between them, so that way they could sweep their tusks back and forth in this lawnmower of death. And it was really cool. It was a cool choice. Also, science question. I don't know if this is true, so this may be foolish, but proboscideans, is that referring to like their nose because it's like a proboscis? Yay,
Yes.
gold star for me. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's the family that includes mammoths and elephants. Yes, other pieces from this battle. While we're on it,
Mhm.
I really loved the way that they animated the dead king,
Yes.
where it, depending on how you looked at his face, you could see, you know, kind of just like a scarred warrior, and then otherwise like completely decomposed. Like sometimes his nose was there but the jaw wasn't really, sometimes the jaw was there but the nose wasn't, sometimes everything was there but there were like gouges in the cheek. That was so good.
I liked that a lot. It kept him from being just flat and silly looking because it had this sort of eeriness. And another thing that I learned while we're thinking about the dead, there's that scene when they're in the dead city and just these skulls come pouring out of the walls and they're drowning in
Mhm.
skulls. And we were all going, okay, that's a lot of fucking skulls. And why are there only skulls? Who organized all these skulls? Why are these skulls here? Lots of questions about skulls. I found out that that was a practical effect. They were miniature skulls, and there were 80,000 of them.
Oh my god.
So in case you were wondering how many skulls there were, it's 80,000. It's a lot. But
That's a lot of skulls.
the whole city of the dead armies were very cool. I love that they basically just said a big fuck you to Aragorn. Even after he did this whole amazing speech about how he was king and he was going to set them free, they went, no. Because they're dead. Why do they give a shit? And then eventually they decided to show up. But I
Right.
liked, this was, I guess, the movie version because we don't get the phenomenon really in the movies. And this is just occurring to me now. We don't really get so much the phenomenon where the light hits Aragorn just right and he's an amazing shiny king. We know from the beginning that this is his destiny. And so it's not really a surprise that we're building up to. But he still has a lot of influence over people just naturally. And so this was his opportunity to try that and have it not work. And I remember when we talked about that in the books as well. It's a good moment to show that even Aragorn doesn't control everything. And that was really effective.
I feel like there's a few moments where, particularly in this movie, where we see him becoming more kingly, and there's that moment where he's holding up Anduril in the City of the Dead for the first time, and it's like bisecting his face, and then he uses it to block the dead king's sword strike,
Mhm.
and the king is like you can't be Isildur's heir, like that line was broken. And and then later on we see it with like before the Black Gate.
Mhm.
I feel like when he turns before he delivers the "For Frodo" line, there's the glow behind his head.
Yes, there is that.
And I have a musical note for this too in a little bit. The other piece from the dead bit, Aragorn's little heave over the side of the ship and then swagger walk forward with the sword held up in both hands to the Fellowship leitmotif. Uh, Porn.
Yeah.
Good God.
Listeners, we know what does it for us, and it's Viggo Mortensen fully clothed, holding a sword.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, it's beyond reproach, frankly. If you are someone whose heart can be stirred by the sight of a man, and you look upon him and feel nothing, I don't know what to tell you. You're lying. If your heart cannot be stirred by the sight of a man, that's fine. But if it can,
Cool.
then, I don't think anyone's immune, unless you're a ghost king.
I have a few other general observations from various points. There's a heavy use, and we mentioned this last time, of slow-mo. Not like super slow motion, but just ever so slightly slowed down
Mm-hmm.
to either provide emphasis to a scene or like at the end of the battle, it feels almost dreamlike
Yeah.
because it's also slow and you're getting music, but not the sound from the scene.
Mhm.
And so you see Aemir's scream of anguish when he sees his sister, but you don't hear it. And the look on his face, like, good job, Mr. Carl Urban, sir. That was phenomenal work. The mouth of Sauron riding his gnarly, mangy ass horse, and also just the general look was very, very good. The weird, sort of creepy smile slash grimace slash baring teeth with the killer voice. It's excellent.
In post, they doubled the size of his mouth
I
to
thought
really
so.
to really go in on the whole mouth of Sauron thing. He also has these cuts on his face that kind of go out in this starburst pattern around the mouth. It's very unsettling. But I thought that his design was really good. It wasn't how I envisioned him necessarily. I was imagining more
No.
just kind of a blank canvas of a spooky guy, but this was good. I don't have any critiques of the design. I thought it was really cool, very creepy. Just in general, with a lot of the creepy, fucked up little guys, I imagine it must have been really fun to do the makeup and other character facial design stuff for this movie, because I imagine if you are a person who is good at special effects makeup, being told to just make 1,000 of the most fucked up little guys you can imagine is probably a dream come true. Like, that's probably so fun. Because especially the orcs, they had a cohesive look, but each one was so unique and their faces were all different. And one of them had a helmet with another smaller head on top that he'd obviously cut
I
off of some
saw that.
creature.
Oh my
They were just
god.
so fun that that did help ease some of the sting of me being scared of them. they were they were really cool.
Other makeup piece, it's subtle. I don't know if it's in the makeup intentionally or what, but it looked like there had been a single tear track run down Elijah Wood's cheek through
Mhm.
the dirt and the grime at the end as they're making their approach to Mount Doom. And I don't know if, like, either he actually was crying or something got in his eye and they were like, fuck it, we ball. Or if that was like intentional and they were just like, we just won't put something there. We're going to make it look like you were crying at some point. Like, let's go.
They just went for it. They went for it with Elijah Wood's makeup. With specifically, I loved the like abrasions on his neck from the chain of the ring. It's like when you
Mm-hmm.
see those really sad dodo videos of dogs that have been chained up outside for a year and their neck is all raw. It's They don't mention that in the books. That was just a movie decision, but I think that it worked really well, especially because the ring is tucked into his shirt most of the time. It's not like you're seeing it,
Mm-hmm.
but you have that visual reminder of how it's literally eating away at him. That was very good.
I guess I will talk about some music thoughts unless you have some other things you want to get to.
My last big sort of overarching theme thing that I noticed with the design is that this whole movie is very blue and gray and brown. Those are the colors
Mm.
of Return of the King. There's a good amount of red inside Meduseld and obviously Mount Doom at the end. There's lava. But even at happy, positive scenes like Aragorn's coronation, we don't actually see a variety of colors on screen
Mm-hmm.
until the very end when Sam is back in the Shire. At Frodo's goodbye, we start seeing more of softer, more natural greens as opposed to green man-made materials or hobbit-made materials, whatever. Not like, green stone and green cloth and stuff, but we're seeing more plants and leaves and nice calming nature. But it's not until Sam is walking back to his home that we see presumably Eleanor. I don't think that they name the kids in the movie. Eleanor's running up to him in her little flower print dress, and Rosie has her dress with a beautiful embroidery on the front, and there's colorful flowers and birds chirping and shit. And it's not until Sam is reinstalled in his rightful place in his home, that there's literally color back in the world. And that's how we know that things are really going to be okay.
And I was noticing all those little details of the
Mhm.
house with the colors and the flowers and like, filigree on the that's not the word, but like the designs on the window, and there was
Yeah.
like designs of like grape leaves on the around the door. Like, it's so good. Also, one tidbit about Eleanor.
Yes.
First of all, she has the song that plays there is its own unique piece. That's not a piece that we hear through the rest of the the story, and it is titled Eleanor on the
Oh.
soundtrack. Eleanor Gamgee is played by Ali Aston, who is Sean Astin's daughter.
No, stop. That's so cute.
So she is legitimately running to her dad.
That's amazing. I'm like, there's literally a real tear in my eye. That's
It's
adorable.
so cute. It was
Because,
mhm.
and I'm sure that it's cool if you have a family member who's in, well, why am I saying this like it's abstract? I have a family member who's been in movies. I will not dox myself by saying who it was. But my great grandmother was a very successful working actress, not like super famous. She was like a B-lister, but she was in a lot of stuff. Elvis was a fan of her. Fun family lore for another time. But she was a well-known working actress in the 40s and 50s. And that's cool to be able to look at things and say, hey, that's my great grandmother. That's a member of my family. And this part of her life has been preserved. Her face is on a greeting card that you can buy at Target. um, so like that's cool, that's awesome to see, but to have the next level of look, whatever, you told me the name of the child and I forget, that's a video of you and dad together when you were a kid and you were all dressed up for the Lord of the Rings movie. That's the ultimate, that's not a home video at that point, but it's the ultimate home video. That's so fucking cool to just like have that memory with her dad. That's so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
That was really all I had for main design observations. I know in the last two I talked more about costumes. The costumes didn't really change that much in this movie. I didn't have anything new to say
Just the
on
nuns.
that front. Yeah, just the nuns. But that concludes my specific deep dive knowledge. So now I hand it off to you.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through my notes before I get down to like the music section.
Mm-hmm.
There's one point where Denethor has the audacity to be like, Rohan has deserted us. Theoden has betrayed me. Bitch, you didn't even want to light the beacons.
Yeah. No one ever helps me around this damn house energy.
Honestly. Bernard Hill doing his fantastic fucking little speech before the Rohirrim on the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, adapted from the books. Again, we mentioned last time that Bernard Hill's a Shakespearean classically trained actor who just brings it.
Mm-hmm.
That was so well done. Also in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, Legolas does that cool elf shit on the Mumak, and I love him
Yes.
counting with every shot that he takes. And we get a Wilhelm scream as he heaves a guy off of the elephant.
Now, this is one of those times where I will admit that I don't know something. Explain to me again what the Wilhelm scream is, because it's a phrase that I hear all the time, but like I'm not confident that I could explain it.
It's that wow scream.
Mhm.
It's a stock sound effect, and it comes from a 1953 western,
Amazing.
and it just gets it just gets used everywhere. It's like a little joke now that people put in.
Mhm.
Other piece on speeches, Aragorn is when he's giving his speech before the Black Gate. It's an incredible speech. It's genuinely inspiring as all hell. Like I want to draw my own sword and charge into battle beside him.
Mhm.
But man, the camera's doing a lot of work there, and also I kind of have to laugh because one, his horse he kind of keeps going back and forth on his horse, just back and forth and back and forth. It's like he's on a merry-go-round. And then he also, when he does the I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me, that it rises up like nasally, and he
I did
holds that
notice that.
knee just a half a beat too long. Like if it was us in the pod, I would trim that back.
Mhm.
And then he finishes the speech, which again, genuinely inspiring, delivered by this semi-mythical Arthurian king that has returned at the hour of Gondor's greatest need to the literal sea of orcs that vanishes back into the horizon. And it's like, that sort of having been in your eye line this whole time might defeat the speech.
A little bit. Also, I was thinking about the logistics of how much everybody could hear of this speech, because it's a great speech, but they have a lot of soldiers, and he's running back and forth, so they're probably just catching, my brave men, raise your swords. Like, how much of this are they actually getting? I'm going to hand wave it and say, yeah, it's magic. He can project his voice. But that did occur to me while I was watching it, that maybe not everyone could really hear the speech that well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, music. I will start with talking about the theme of the Gondor theme.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've heard it a little bit, but it is used quite frequently in this movie. And Gondor actually has two themes. There's one that is labeled by one of the resources I was looking at as the Gondor leitmotif, and one that's labeled as the White Tree, which also pops up here and there. But to start talking about the Gondor theme, I'm going to go all the way back to Fellowship to do a little bit of a deep dive into Sam's favorite scene in the entire series. We first hear the Gondor theme during the Council of Elrond during Boromir's speech.
I didn't know if this was going to be sincere or a bit. I was thinking, oh, what's my favorite scene in the series? I should know if it's my own favorite now. Fine, continue. Redeem the Council of Elrond for me.
So there's Boromir's speech where he leans forward and does his little, it is a gift to the foes of Mordor.
Why not use this ring? Long has my father, the steward of Gondor, kept the forces of Mordor at bay. By the blood of our people are your lands kept safe. Give Gondor the weapon of the enemy. Let us use it against him.
You cannot wield it. None of us can. The One Ring answers to Sauron alone. It has no other master.
And what would a ranger know of this matter?
This is no mere ranger. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. You owe him your allegiance.
Aragorn. This is Isildur's heir.
And heir to the throne of Gondor.
Havodad, Legolas.
Gondor has no king. Gondor needs no king.
Listeners, as Ryn's friend in real life, this is one of the top things that they quote all the time. I knew this speech before I had even clapped eyes on these books. Continue.
The music doesn't start until midway through this speech. It begins with solo French horn when Boromir says the word Gondor.
Mhm.
And it's just solo French horn on the full theme. And then it's almost plaintive, painful, and yet proud. And then when Aragorn interjects, there's a movement of strings and low brass. When he starts explaining his reasoning, it's the French horn standing solo again. And that continues through Boromir asking him what would a mere ranger know of this matter? And then Legolas stands up and interjects. And this is where now there's a second French horn. And the theme repeats, but the second horn now is backing up Legolas's words, and it feels now like a conversation between Aragorn and Boromir, both represented as men of Gondor by the two French horns.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us the impression that they're two of the same type of person, and they're harmonizing, not in conflict, no matter what the words say. Then, as Boromir puts the pieces together and realizes that Aragorn is Isildur's heir and thus heir to the throne of Gondor, the theme is played again with low brass and strings, and there's a subtle difference in the second phrase. And it serves the same auditory purpose as those descriptions of Aragorn in the right light being princely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, no. This is his theme.
Yes.
And then it cuts off immediately and goes into strings and low moving minor chords as Boromir rejects that. He refuses the call. He says Gondor has no king. Gondor needs no king. And it feels like he had an opportunity to join in and fill out the orchestration and become the hero of his own part of the story. But he continues to hold himself apart from Aragorn rather than working with him, as was the design of the steward's position initially, and it ultimately costs him his life.
Mm-hmm.
The Gondor theme then continues throughout the movies. We don't hear it more than once or twice in Two Towers, but it's every other phrase in Return of the King.
Yeah.
And it's used in a number of different ways. We get it alongside quotes from the Fellowship motif when Pippin and Gandalf ride to Minas Tirith, and then we get basically our first full statement, full orchestration of the theme as we get to see so much of the city. There's moving strings underneath, but the strings have some tension to them. It's like we're seeing this glorious city now preparing for war, seeking help here, but we don't know what we're going to find when we get to the top.
Mm-hmm.
The next major orchestral statement of the theme is the lighting of the signal fires.
Yes.
There is a string movement before you get the classic bum 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 banana, and the strings there are providing a sense of urgency, but they're not as discordant as they were when they were initially riding through Minas Tirith, and it feels like we're getting a little hope. And that string and low winds section builds into the theme, and it feels like the earlier section is going from desperate to, oh, this might actually work, to when the full Gondor theme comes in, it's a, this is Gondor, this is what this means, we are standing, we are fighting, if we're going down, we're taking you with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it returns to fast, but now major key, hopeful strings as we now come to the next morning and the last signal fire lights, and Aragorn sees the fire, runs into Meduseld and says, Gondor calls for aid. The beacons of Minas Tirith, Gondor calls for aid, and the music stops there for a moment. And as Theoden says, and Rohan will answer, there's another statement of the theme in brass of the Rohan theme. Not the Gondor theme, but the Rohan theme.
Mm-hmm.
The beacons of Minas City! The beacons are lit! Gondor calls for aid!
And Rohan will answer. Muster the Rohirrim.
And then we get depressing with it because
Oh,
as
no.
Faramir and his men go on their suicide mission, it plays like a funeral dirge. And then that combined with the imagery of all of these people lining the streets and laying down flowers at their feet as they go by, all dressed in black and gray. Like, these men are already dead. Their bodies just haven't figured that out yet.
Mm-hmm.
We get it again in a similar funeral march style, but a little more hopeful as the army rides out to the Black Gate. And then we finally get it again in all of its glory when Aragorn is crowned king. And that movement, that goes from Frodo's sickbed, where it's fellowship theme, Shire theme, fellowship theme, the White Tree, into the main Gondor theme.
Mm-hmm.
Leading up to that sickbed, I was also paying a lot of attention to the music because we're jumping back and forth a lot during that whole scene between the Black Gate and Mount Doom.
Mm-hmm.
And so the music kind of can't change every scene, but there's little changes here and there. There's a lot of statements of the fellowship theme. There's a lot of like single chord statements of the fellowship theme. By this point, the fellowship theme is so well established that Howard Shore can kind of just put the bum bum bum, and that's the fellowship.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do any more than that. That's the fellowship. He also, over the approach to Mount Doom, uses flutes and high woodwinds to hint at the Shire theme.
I noticed that.
But they're not playing the recognizable Shire theme.
They're not. But I noticed it and I put it in my notes and I was like, Ryn is going to be proud of me because I picked that up.
It was very good. Then there's the piece of, I can't carry this burden for you, but I can carry you.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. Come on!
And you get solo trumpet trading off with low French horn and these sweeping gestures as, they take step after step towards Sammath Naur. And then the other piece from this scene that I feel like we hear a lot of, going back and forth between the Black Gate and Mount Doom, is a lot of low strings, choir. We break into the fellowship theme with low strings and organ, and then a vocal choir takes it over.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives it, as we're going between the battle that's actively in progress now and the approach to Mount Doom, it's a very Choir of Angels, Choir of Valkyries feel.
Yes.
Singing over those that are about to be carried off to Valhalla. And then it fades away into that one solo voice for the leitmotif that I can only call hope, which we hear a few times in the series, but always just when all hope is lost and then regained. It shows up with the moth at Orthanc. to rescue Gandalf. It shows up when the Ents destroy Isengard. It shows up when the Rohirrim arrive at the Pelennor Fields, and it's folded in with the Rohan motif there. And it shows up again here now, quoting the first time it showed up with the moth and the eagles coming with a solo soprano voice.
Mhm.
We get more choral bits through the destruction of the ring and through the rescue of Sam and Frodo by the eagles and by Gandalf. And the choral bits here felt very churchy.
Yeah.
And I was struck by that and the imagery then of Frodo as he's picked up by the eagle, because we're given an image, a shot of him in the eagle's claw, lying back just of his head, kind of lolling back. And it felt very Pietà, very Lamentation of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that fading from that shot where it's like, is he dead? Is he not really dead? To the shot of him all dressed in white in the white bed in the ethereal sunbeam. I was like, oh, it's Jesus. That's the resurrection.
Yeah.
And the music here, again, we have some use of the like slight slow-mo as the Fellowship all enters.
Mm-hmm.
You have woodwinds with a few quotes from the Shire and Hope theme. And then it fades to just the Fellowship theme, specifically when Aragorn comes in, because he's the last member of the Fellowship to not be standing in the room except for Sam.
Mm-hmm.
And that Fellowship theme gets its full quote, and then it stops when Sam is standing in the doorway, and Sam and Frodo lock eyes, and it switches back to the Shire theme.
Yeah.
Because the Fellowship has always been important. But Sam, as much as he's been a part of it, was there for Frodo above all else. And so having the Shire theme over Sam and Frodo, it places Sam as Frodo's center and Frodo's home. And so getting the leitmotif for their collective home as they focus on each other to the exclusion of the rest of the Fellowship is really, really good.
Yeah.
There's a similar moment of this when Frodo guides Bilbo onto the boat at the Grey Havens. There's bits of the Fellowship theme, but when it's just him and Sam talking, it's the Shire theme again.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, this all fades into the White Tree, into Gondor as King Elisar is crowned, and then it fades out as Viggo sings. And I want to be so focused on the majesty of the moment, but one, it's hot,
Mm-hmm.
and two, Viggo manages to make it also heart-wrenching.
Yeah. Because it's a bitter victory, you know? It's like he's there, he's king, but a million fucking people died and it was horrible.
Yeah, and he's singing in Elvish. These are lines direct from the book, which Aragorn speaks in the book, but is sung here. This is, again, Viggo came up with the music for this.
Of course he did.
But this is the lines he sings, Et iero en dorena utilien, sinome maruvan ar Hildinjar ten ambar meta. Out of the great sea to Middle-earth I am come. In this place I will abide, and my heirs unto the ending of the world. And it's him singing over that whole shot until we see fucking Arwen.
Well, first, before we see Arwen, because when we were watching this together, you know, he's getting crowned, it's amazing. And then I said, oh, Elrond's gonna be pissed. Now he doesn't have anything to hold over him because he's met his impossible Herculean labor of a task. And, when you become king, then you'll be good enough for my daughter. And going, oh, fuck, he became king. And then it pans to Elrond and you see his disappointed face. And then Arwen steps out from behind the banner. So good.
And the grabbing of the banner that he like shoves aside so he can see her whole face, and she's bowing to him and he tips her chin up, and then the kiss and the spin around and it was so good.
And I am the type of person who, you know, I bluster a lot on this very horny podcast. I'll say whatever because, why not? This is somewhat anonymous. Y'all can't see my face. But there is a certain type of generic straight person TV kiss that still just makes me cringe a little bit. Makes me go, oh, this is kind of uncomfortable to watch. I don't like this. This was a good kiss. This was an exceptionally well done movie kiss. I felt the true love there in a way that I just have not seen in a lot of other stuff. It was affecting.
Since the invention of the kiss, there have only been 5 kisses that were rated the most passionate, the most pure. This one left them all behind. Princess Bride.
Another thing that I have not seen.
We can do a special on that because that's another one of my favorite movies. Speaking of kisses, the forehead kiss that Frodo gives Sam at the end.
That and their meaningful eye contact when he's in his sick bed. Those are the two things that bring homoeroticism is the wrong word because it's not erotic, but that bring that implication of their relationship that has been lacking the rest of these movies. Those are some lingering, intimate moments. Whatever you want to chalk them up to in the movie characterization of their relationship, those are some intense moments. And they were so good.
The one other really wonderful music moment, I think, that I noted was Billy Boyd's song, Pippin's song, over Faramir's charge to Osgiliath, because it is alternating shots between the charge to Osgiliath, which, again, we don't have the sound from that, we just see the motions, and then the shot of Denethor mangling a tomato and chicken disgustingly juxtaposed there. Billy Boyd wrote the music for that. Billy Boyd, Pippin's actor. And the lyrics are, if you remember, way back in chapter 3, Three's Company of Fellowship.
Trying to cast my mind back that far.
There is a nice little walking song that they're singing.
Ooh.
And this is the final verse of that lovely little walking song that has been had a couple of words removed at the end there, where they talk about and now going to bed. It's like you gave up your worries and now you're going to bed, which is also wonderful. This is another like book to movie moment for the book nerds, because Pippin says like he can sing songs of his own people well enough, but nothing for great halls. And he's clearly feeling the weight of this place. And so him trying to sing a happy song from the Shire and not managing it because of the place that he's in, I think is the best way to do that. Yeah, that was also just fucking gorgeous. Trying to think if there are any sort of major musical pieces. I felt like the music for this movie was much more brass heavy, a lot more high brass specifically, which makes sense. It's a lot more battle focused, so you get more fanfare type music. And it was nice to hear some of the leitmotifs that we haven't heard as much, and also hear hints at leitmotifs that we've heard more often that we're now familiar enough with that we don't need the full thing to get the effect.
Yeah.
Final piece, which doesn't actually apply to the extended edition, so this came up in my reading, We've talked about how Howard Shore drew from Wagnerian opera for this, but if you find the file that says finale theatrical cut, so this is what closed out the credits in the theatrical cut. And it's just his final goodbye to this opera that he wrote. And you don't have to listen to all of it, but if you then listen to this lovely little quote from Wagner. It's a lovely little tribute to Wagner right there at the end. You can hear the similarities there.
I feel like I don't know enough about Wagner to hear it.
I think it's just the similarities in the movement, the chords, the instrumentation. He's pulling almost direct quotes from that piece of Wagner.
That's very sweet. I like that.
And I like too that the last piece of music that we hear over the actual story that we're seeing is its own unique piece. It's the fourth age of Middle Earth is beginning. The ring bearers are gone, and now Sam gets to live his story with his family. And so it's a closing of our story and a beginning of a new one for Sam.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good place, I think, to close our story, unless you have any other notes.
No, I think we've about covered it. We fucking did it.
We did. Fucking well done, bestie.
Right back at you. All of my big feelings TM about it, I just want to save for us, not for the podcast, but they're there. The feelings are present. We have to do some logisticking amongst ourselves to figure out what the next couple episodes are going to look like. We have a few more ideas for bonus content related to Lord of the Rings, and then at some point we will be making announcements about season 2, which we have already hinted at. You have planned out way in advance before we even started doing Lord of the Rings stuff. You already had started to make plans. So there will be much, much more of us for your ears. Don't you worry, listeners.
We literally have years of content. Not only for us to go through, but also then to do podcasts on. So if you like what you're listening to and would like to hear more for the next several years, or however much time you would like to stick with us, but we'd love if you stick with us for good. It's great to have you here. You can follow our podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. We're on all the major ones, and I assume some of the less major ones too. If you would like to interact with us outside of the podcast, you can shoot us a message on our social media. We are at FanappPod, FANAPPPOD, on whatever social media sites we're on. If we're on a social media site, that's what we're on under. You can also always send us an email at thephantomapprentice@gmail.com. And we will be back in 2 weeks with a new episode for your ears. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for coming on this last stage of the journey with us, the many stages that led up to that, the many last stages that led up to that. It's been a lot of fun, and we will never put Lord of the Rings away fully. It will always be in our toolboxes and in our commentary and in random bonus episodes we come up with in the future. But this is the end of a big piece of this podcast, and it's been a lot of fun to do this, and I'm excited to see where we're going to go from here.
Yeah, this means a lot to both of us that y'all are here and listening to the things that we have to say, which is kind of wild. We genuinely, sincerely appreciate y'all spending part of your day with us. And we're excited to hang out with each other, mostly, really, and also to experience some new things, bring some new stuff to y'all. So thank you for hanging out, and we will see you next time. Bye.
See you next time. The Phantom Apprentice is produced and edited by Ryn and Sam. Our music is written and performed by James. You can hear more of his music on Spotify or on Bandcamp under the group Beiruz, Baeruz. Our art is by Casey Turgeon. You can find more of her work at KCT Designs on Instagram. The content discussed is the property of the Tolkien Estate and of Peter Jackson and New Line Cinemas, and is used here under fair use.